The strongest man isn't the one who can lift the heaviest weight. It's the one who can lift himself out of weakness, distraction, and chaos. You can train your body like a warrior, sculpting muscle and building endurance until you look like you're carved from stone. But if you never train your mind like a philosopher, you'll win battles and still lose your peace. You'll conquer opponents but remain enslaved to your own thoughts. You'll build an empire externally while crumbling internally. This is the paradox that destroys strong men. They master the barbell, but they never master the breath. They learn to fight others, but they never learn to quiet themselves. They become warriors of the body, but peasants of the mind. Today we end that divide. Today you learn the ancient practice that creates complete human beings. Warriors who think, philosophers who act, individuals who possess both the strength to endure and the wisdom to know what's worth enduring. This is how you train like a warrior and think like a philosopher. Part 1. The Mind of the Warrior. A warrior sharpens his sword daily. A philosopher sharpens his mind hourly. Combine the two and you become unstoppable. But let's be clear about what this actually means. A warrior isn't simply someone who lifts weights or learns to throw a punch. That's an athlete. A warrior is someone who trains with the understanding that the real battle is always within. The external opponent, whether it's another person, a difficult circumstance, or a physical challenge, is just the mirror that reveals your internal state. The ancient Spartans understood this. Before their legendary battles, they didn't just train their bodies, they trained in silence. They practiced stillness. They learned to manage the chaos inside their own minds, so that when chaos erupted around them, they remained unmoved. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, was both warrior and thinker. He led Roman legions into battle, but he also spent hours each day writing in his journal, examining his thoughts, correcting his judgments. He understood that physical strength without wisdom is just rage waiting to explode. It's undirected force. It's a weapon without a wielder. And wisdom without strength, that's just hesitation dressed up in contemplation. It's the person who has all the right ideas but lacks the discipline to execute them. They understand the path, but they never walk it. But when physical discipline meets philosophical wisdom, when the warrior and the philosopher merge into one, discipline becomes divine. You become a force that cannot be broken because you've learned to break yourself first, in training, in reflection, in the daily practice of self-conquest. Part 2. The Ancient Method. This is what the Stoics mastered. They didn't train for recognition or external validation. They trained for readiness. Readiness for whatever life would throw at them. Readiness to maintain their composure when everything around them collapsed. They fought not enemies, but emotions. They conquered not lands, but the self. And this internal conquest was harder than any external victory. Epictetus, who was once a slave, understood this better than anyone. He couldn't control his circumstances. He couldn't control what his master did to him, but he discovered he could control his responses. He could train his mind to remain free even when his body was in chains. He became more powerful in slavery than most free men ever become in freedom. He taught his students, no man is free who is not master of himself. And that mastery doesn't happen by accident. It happens through daily practice, through training. The Stoics developed a system. Every morning, they prepared their minds for the challenges ahead. They visualized obstacles and rehearsed their responses. They reminded themselves of their principles. They set their intention not just for what they would accomplish, but for who they would be regardless of what happened. And every evening, they reflected. They asked themselves 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my own standards? What will I adjust tomorrow? This wasn't self-judgment. It was self-knowledge. It was the philosophical mind examining the warrior's actions and extracting wisdom from experience. Part 3. The Morning Warrior. So, let's make this practical. Let's talk about how you actually do this in your modern life. Every morning, train like it's war, against your own weakness. The moment your alarm goes off, you're in battle. The enemy is the voice that says just 5 more minutes. The enemy is the comfort that whispers, you can start tomorrow. The enemy is every excuse that tries to convince you that comfort is more important than commitment. Your first victory of the day happens before your feet hit the floor. You either defeat that voice or you surrender to it, and that first battle sets the tone for every battle that follows. When you rise, you don't check your phone. You don't immediately dive into the chaos of other people's agendas and demands. Instead, you create space. You sit in silence for even just 60 seconds and remind yourself who you are and what you stand for. Then you move your body. Not because you're chasing aesthetics or trying to impress anyone. You move because movement is mastery. When you force your body to do what's difficult, you're training your mind to do the same. When your muscles resist and you push through anyway, you're teaching yourself that resistance is not an excuse. It's an invitation to grow. The ancient warriors didn't train in air-conditioned gyms with motivational posters on the wall. They trained in the elements. They ran in the heat. They practiced in the cold. They lifted heavy stones, not because they were convenient, but because life is heavy and inconvenient, and they wanted to be ready. You don't need a perfect setup. You need commitment. You can train with your own body weight. You can run in your neighborhood. You can lift whatever is heavy. The method matters less than the mindset. And here's the philosophical layer. As you train, you watch your thoughts. When your muscles burn and your mind starts negotiating, maybe you can stop now. This is enough. You don't need to prove anything. You recognize those thoughts as the real opponent. The physical challenge is just the arena where you meet your mental weaknesses. The burning in your muscles isn't an emergency. It's just sensation. The voice saying stop isn't wisdom. It's just habit. The impulse to quit isn't truth. It's just the part of you that hasn't been trained yet. And as you practice this in training, you're building a skill that translates to everything. When someone criticizes you, you won't react, you'll respond. When unexpected challenges arise, you won't panic, you'll adapt. When circumstances pressure you, you won't break, you'll bend and return to center. This is what separates trained warriors from people who just exercise. Training isn't about burning calories or building muscle. Those are side effects. Training is about forging an unshakable internal state that can withstand external chaos.
Part 5. The Evening Philosopher. Now, let's talk about the other half of the equation. Because a warrior without philosophy is just controlled violence. Useful, perhaps, but incomplete. Every evening, you must reflect like a philosopher. You must ask yourself, what did I conquer within today? Notice the question isn't, what did I accomplish, or how productive was I? Those questions focus on external results. The philosopher's question focuses on internal growth. Did you resist the temptation to react in anger when someone provoked you? That's conquest. Did you stay focused on your priorities despite countless distractions? That's conquest. Did you choose discipline over comfort even when no one was watching? That's conquest. This is the evening review that Seneca practiced. At the end of each day, he would sit quietly and examine his actions, not to punish himself for mistakes, but to learn from them. Not to inflate his ego with victories, but to understand what led to them so he could replicate those conditions. He approached this practice with what he called gentle scrutiny. He wasn't a harsh judge condemning himself. He was a wise coach reviewing game tape, looking for patterns, identifying areas for improvement, celebrating effective strategies. Here's how you do this practically. Find a quiet space. This might be sitting on the edge of your bed, in a chair, or even in your car before you go inside after work. The location doesn't matter. The intention does. Take 3 deep breaths. Let the frenetic energy of the day begin to settle. You're creating a transition from the external world of doing to the internal world of being. Then ask yourself 3 questions. First, where did I demonstrate strength today? And I don't mean physical strength, I mean character strength. Where did you show patience? Where did you display discipline? Where did you act with integrity even when it would have been easier to not? Be specific. Don't just think, I was pretty good today. Identify actual moments. Like, when my coworker criticized my project, I took a breath before responding defensively. That's data. That's evidence of growth. Why does this matter? Because your brain is hardwired to notice what's wrong. It's a survival mechanism. But if you only focus on your failures, you reinforce the identity of someone who fails. By intentionally identifying your successes, not to be arrogant, but to be accurate, you reinforce the identity of someone who demonstrates strength. Second, where did I fall short of my own standards? Notice I didn't say, where did I fail, or what did I do wrong? Those questions trigger shame, and shame doesn't produce growth, it produces hiding. Where did I fall short of my own standards is a question of curiosity, not condemnation. It assumes you have standards, which means you're already operating at a higher level than most people. It acknowledges that you didn't meet them today, which is useful information, not moral judgment. Again, be specific. I fell short when I chose to scroll on my phone instead of having a real conversation with my partner. I fell short when I avoided a difficult conversation at work because I was afraid of conflict. I fell short when I let exhaustion become an excuse to not follow through on my commitment. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about seeing yourself clearly. You cannot correct a course you don't know you're off. Third, based on this, what is one small adjustment I can make tomorrow? This is the bridge between reflection and action. This is what prevents the evening review from becoming just another form of overthinking. The key word here is small. Don't say, tomorrow I'll be a completely different person. That's fantasy, not planning. Say, tomorrow, when I feel the urge to check my phone during conversation, I'll take a breath and make eye contact instead. One small, concrete, actionable adjustment. That's how real change happens. Not through grand declarations, but through micro-commitments that compound over time. Part 6. The measure of strength. Your strength isn't measured by who you defeat. It's measured by what you endure without losing your clarity. Let me explain what this means. In our culture, we celebrate victory. We celebrate the person who wins the fight, closes the deal, achieves the goal. And there's nothing wrong with achievement. But if your self-worth is tied only to victory, you become fragile, because you won't always win. Life guarantees that. The true measure of your development is not what you do when you're winning. It's what you do when you're losing. When things don't go your way, when you're rejected, when you fail, when circumstances seem to be against you. Can you maintain your composure? Can you stay aligned with your principles? Can you keep your mind clear even when your emotions are turbulent? That's the real test, and that's what Warrior-Philosopher training prepares you for. When you train your body through discomfort every day, you're not just building muscle, you're building proof that you can stay calm in discomfort. You're developing evidence that temporary pain doesn't have to equal permanent panic. When you reflect every evening, reviewing your actions with honest curiosity, you're not just learning from mistakes, you're developing the ability to observe yourself without being controlled by yourself. You're creating distance between who you are and what you feel, which is the foundation of true freedom. The Stoics had a practice called voluntary discomfort. They would intentionally put themselves in uncomfortable situations, fasting, sleeping on hard floors, wearing simple clothes, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they wanted to prove to themselves that discomfort couldn't break them. They understood something profound. The things you fear lose their power the moment you voluntarily face them. You don't have to become an ascetic, but you can apply this principle. Take cold showers occasionally. Fast for a day. Say no to comfort when it would be easy to say yes. Not to punish yourself, but to train yourself, to prove to yourself that you're stronger than your circumstances. Part 7. The empty room. Imagine yourself in an empty room. No music, no noise, just your breath and your purpose. That's where warriors and philosophers are born. Most people can't sit alone with themselves for 5 minutes without reaching for distraction. The phone, the TV, the snack, the scroll, anything to avoid the confrontation with their own thoughts. But that avoidance is cowardice. It's the refusal to meet yourself. And if you can't meet yourself in silence, how can you possibly know yourself in chaos? The practice is simple, but it's not easy. Once a day, even for just 5 minutes, sit in silence. No input, no entertainment, no productivity. Just you and your breathing. At first, your mind will rebel. It will produce an endless stream of thoughts, worries, plans, and judgments. That's normal. Your mind is used to being distracted, so when you remove the distraction, all the suppressed noise rises to the surface. Don't try to stop the thoughts. That's impossible, and it will only frustrate you. Instead, just notice them. Watch them appear and disappear like clouds moving across the sky. You are not your thoughts. You are the one watching the thoughts. This is meditation, but I don't want you to get caught up in the word. This isn't about achieving enlightenment or becoming a monk. This is tactical training for your attention. You're learning to direct your focus intentionally instead of letting it be pulled by every stimulus. And here's why this matters. Attention is the currency of your life. Whatever you pay attention to becomes your experience. If your attention is constantly hijacked by notifications, news, other people's opinions, then your life is being lived for you, not by you. But if you can train your attention, if you can sit in an empty room with just your breath and stay present, then you can direct your life. You can choose where your energy goes. You can decide what deserves your mental real estate and what doesn't. This is the philosopher's practice meeting the warrior's discipline. The warrior controls his body. The philosopher controls his attention. When you combine both, you control your life.
Part 8. The daily mastery. So from today, train, think, reflect, repeat. This isn't a one-time event. This isn't something you do when you feel motivated. This is a system, a daily practice, a lifestyle that creates mastery over time. Every morning, you train your body. You move, you push, you practice discomfort. You prove to yourself that you're stronger than your resistance. Throughout the day, you think like a philosopher. You observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. You choose your responses instead of being victim to your reactions. You ask yourself, is this aligned with who I want to be? Every evening, you reflect. You review the day with gentle curiosity. You identify your strengths. You acknowledge your shortcomings. You set a small intention for tomorrow. And then you repeat. Not because you'll ever be perfect, but because repetition creates transformation. You're not trying to achieve some final destination where you've made it and no longer need to practice. That's a fantasy. The practice is the destination. The daily training is the mastery. You're never done growing, which means you're never done practicing. And here's what happens when you commit to this. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, you become different. Not in some dramatic overnight transformation, that's movie magic, not real life, but day by day, rep by rep, reflection by reflection, you become more capable, more calm, more clear. Situations that used to overwhelm you become manageable. Emotions that used to control you become information.
Obstacles that used to stop you become opportunities to practice what you've been training. You don't just chase power, you embody it. Not power over others, but power over yourself. Not the power to control external circumstances, but the power to remain unbroken regardless of circumstances. You don't just seek peace, you practice it. Not as some distant goal you'll achieve someday when life finally calms down, but as a daily discipline of returning to center no matter how turbulent things become. Part 9. The Two Wolves. There's an old story. You might have heard it. An elder is teaching his grandson about life. He says, "A fight is going on inside me. It's a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, resentment, all the forces that weaken me. The other wolf is peace, love, hope, humility, compassion, discipline, all the forces that strengthen me. This same fight is going on inside you and inside every person." The grandson asks, "Which wolf wins?" The elder replies, "The one you feed." This is the essence of training like a warrior and thinking like a philosopher. Every day you're feeding one wolf or the other. Every choice, every action, every thought, it's nourishment for one force or another. When you hit snooze instead of getting up to train, you're feeding the weak wolf. When you react in anger instead of responding with intention, you're feeding the weak wolf. When you scroll mindlessly instead of reflecting purposefully, you're feeding the weak wolf. But when you do the hard thing, even when you don't feel like it, you're feeding the strong wolf. When you observe your emotions without being controlled by them, you're feeding the strong wolf. When you acknowledge your shortcomings without shame and commit to small adjustments, you're feeding the strong wolf. Neither wolf ever dies. This isn't about eliminating one side of yourself. It's about understanding that you get to choose every single day which force you're empowering. And the choice isn't made once, it's made moment by moment in the small, unremarkable decisions that no one else sees. The discipline of getting out of bed, the patience in a frustrating conversation, the honesty in your evening reflection, these are the moments that determine who you become. Closing, the modern warrior rises. If you're ready to live like a warrior, but think like a philosopher, it starts now. Not tomorrow, not when things calm down, not when you have more time or feel more motivated. Now. Right now, you can make the decision. You can commit to the practice. You can choose to be someone who doesn't just react to life, but who trains for it, who prepares for it, who develops the strength and the wisdom to meet whatever comes. This is the path the ancients walked. This is how Marcus Aurelius led armies and wrote philosophy. This is how Epictetus remained free in slavery. This is how countless warriors and philosophers throughout history built lives of meaning in the midst of chaos. And this is available to you. Not because you're special or chosen, but because you're human, and this is what humans are capable of when they commit to the practice. So here's your mission. Tomorrow morning, train. Move your body with intention. Push through discomfort. Build evidence of your strength. Throughout tomorrow, think. Watch your thoughts. Choose your responses. Act aligned with your principles. Tomorrow evening, reflect. Review your day. Identify your growth and your gaps. Set one small intention for the next day. And then repeat. Day after day, week after week, month after month. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but consistently, persistently, with the understanding that you're not trying to arrive somewhere, you're training to be ready for anywhere. This is how the modern warrior rises. Not in some distant future when everything is perfect, but in the messy present with all its challenges and imperfections. Discipline is not a destination, it's a daily practice. It's the sword you sharpen every morning and the mind you examine every evening. It's the commitment to growth even when growth is uncomfortable. It's the willingness to face yourself honestly and adjust humbly. This is your weapon. Use it. Welcome to Mind Armor. This is where warriors learn to think and philosophers learn to act. This is where you become complete.